Hello, I'm Amanda Ann Gregory, trauma psychotherapist, trainer, speaker, and writer. And today I'm going to share a few slides from my presentation, The Power of Relationships, Attachment Interventions to Heal Childhood Trauma. Why do we use attachment interventions? Well, one of the biggest reasons is you can avoid playing whack-a-mole. Do you remember the game whack-a-mole? It was pretty popular in arcades. You would have a big mallet and these moles would pop up and when you just hit them. But the thing is, a mole would always pop up once you hit one. They just kept coming and coming. And that's kind of what it feels like when you use other interventions for folks, children, or adults who have unmet attachment needs. Look at this graph. We have attachment in the center. And this would be a client who lacks attachment or struggles with attachment. Usually that brings about other issues, behavioral, learning issues, emotional issues, social issues, and these are just four. There are many more. But applying interventions that aren't attachment based, sometimes they could help with some behavioral issues. But then here come the emotional issues. Sometimes they can help with social skills, but then something else comes up. So it really does have this feeling of playing whack-a-mole. When it comes to attachment needs, I have found that actually addressing the core attachment is the most effective, as opposed to using some other methods such as cognitive or behavioral, solely those, and no attachment or trauma interventions. So one of the big reasons we even use attachment interventions is try to avoid addressing the symptoms and then getting into a very long and tedious game of whack-a-mole. Also, here's another reason why to consider using attachment interventions. Look at this scan of the brain. This is a 3-year-old. On the left, we have a healthy 3-year-old. And if you would see, the brain is pretty active, particularly those front parts of the brain, the temporal lobes, and even the prefrontal cortex in here. Now, those parts of the brain, we need to be online to be able to take advantage of cognitive behavioral interventions. But when these parts of the brain are not online, maybe they're not developed, which typically happens in complex developmental trauma and typically happens when we have attachment disturbances, we see things like this. Those parts not being online or those parts being underdeveloped. Now, when that happens, we have to rely on interventions that actually address the lower parts of the brain. So for example, right in here instead of right here. So what exactly should I be avoiding? Let's talk about some techniques that aren't attachment interventions and some techniques where you may notice aren't working very well. And these are some techniques that might be assuming that the client has an attachment foundation or higher order brain development has already occurred. Things like just providing education, psychoeducation, lecturing someone, providing them with advice, using methods that rely on rewards and consequences, and also behavioral modification. These methods rely on those higher order parts of the brain to be developed, and a lot of times they also rely on some attachment foundation. And so what I mean by that, look at it this way. If I don't want to be close to you, if I struggle with experiencing attachment or experiencing that as intimidating, why would I care what your opinion is of me? Why would I even want a reward? I won't. I won't care. So sometimes that's why these interventions don't work. This can be particularly frustrating in regards to children with attachment needs because these are typically the interventions that we use: rewards, consequences, advice, lecturing, behavioral modification, education, all of these we're constantly using with children. But children who have attachment needs, these interventions may not be working. If you would like more information about attachment or trauma, check me out online on my website. And also, if you would like to speak about me speaking or providing a training for your conference or your employees, Please reach out at any time, and thank you for watching.